Finding a winning product can seem hopeless if you don't have a strategy or a plan. So in this video, I'm going to show you a simple 3-step process on how to do product research like a pro using Helium 10 to find a winning product like this one that I found in less than 10 minutes while filming this video. All right, so the first step of finding a winning product is product discovery. This is where you use different strategies to come up with an endless list of product ideas that you can analyze. You're not going to be able to dream up enough ideas on your own, so the tool we're going to use to help us with product discovery is called the Helium 10 Black Box tool. If you don't already have a Helium 10 account, then the first thing to do is head on over to Helium 10's website and create a new account. Now, Helium 10 has several plans that you can choose from, like you can see here. However, to get unlimited access to all of the powerful tools that I'm going to talk about in this video, I suggest going with the Platinum plan. It's really all that you need. Helium 10 also has a free trial if you want to test it out first. Now, for my followers, I've actually worked out a huge discount with Helium 10. You can save a ton of money on their plans by using the link down in the video description below. So if you do decide to upgrade, make sure you take advantage of that discount. Next, you'll need to download and install the Chrome extension. It's important that you do this step because the Chrome extension is what provides detailed data for step 2, which I'll cover later on in the video. So head on over to helium10.com/extension and click on the Add to Chrome button and follow the instructions. Now, once you've done that, log into Helium 10, click on the Tools option here, and then click on Black Box. Now, there's several ways that you can use Black Box, but in this first step, I'm going to focus on the products option here. I'll show you how to use the other options later on in the video. Now, most people refer to this products option as the product database. In fact, using the product database is how I found my very first product. It's called products or the product database because Helium 10 has gone through and analyzed the millions of products in the Amazon marketplace. And by using these filters here, which I'm going to show you how to use in a second, we're able to get an endless list of viable product ideas. Now, make sure you select the advanced option here. You can try the simple option if you want, but I suggest using the advanced mode as it gives you much more filtering options. All right, so to get started, select the marketplace that you want to research. In this case, I'm selling in the US, so I'm going to choose the US marketplace. Now, the rest of the filters here, it may seem overwhelming, but I'm only going to focus on a few of them, the ones that I find the most useful and give the best results. All right, in the first one here, pick the categories that you want to sell products in. You can select all of them. However, I personally only choose specific categories like the ones that you see here. And the reason is because categories like clothing or shoes and jewelry have way too many variations with all of the different sizes and colors. And people always change their minds after buying them, so you'll get a lot of returns. And that's not something that I want to deal with as it will get quite expensive. Cell phone accessories and electronics break all the time and can be hard to use. And it's also difficult to improve or differentiate because of the manufacturing process. It's usually pretty complicated and expensive. I also avoid anything that you eat, ingest, put in or on your body like lotions and creams because I don't want that liability if someone gets injured or hurt. And I avoid the toys and games category because they have way too many restrictions. It's way too competitive and the life cycle of these products is often very short, sometimes less than a year. Now take note that I have all of these categories selected right now, categories that I'm interested in. But I'm going to show you a pro tip in a minute on why you shouldn't use Black Box this way. So I'm purposely selecting them all right now so that I can show you why in a minute. Now, one of the biggest factors that can lead to failure is not accurately determining the supply and demand of a product. That's sales 101, right? You can't sell a product if there's no one to sell it to. And conversely, it's extremely difficult to get sales if there's a ton of people selling the same thing. So with Black Box, there's 2 ways that you can manage this problem. The first is with the review count. This is how many reviews a product has, and the number of reviews is tied to sales. The more reviews a product has, the more sales they have. And we can use this metric to gauge how competitive a product or niche is. And you want to stay away from highly competitive niches. I suggest keeping it under 300 reviews. Anything much more than that, it's just way too competitive. Now, I get a lot of people asking me why you want to stay away from competitive niches. The short answer is it can be cost prohibitive. In basic terms, how Amazon works is they rank all the listings in the search results based on the daily sales velocity. That means the best sellers are going to show up on the first page. And guess what? Over 70% of sales takes place on the first page. So for any seller, The goal is to get your product listed on the first page. And when you're launching a new product, your listing doesn't have any sales. It doesn't have any sales history. So it's not going to show up on the first page or anywhere that a shopper is going to see it. So the only way for your product to get seen is by using Amazon's PPC advertising system. This is Amazon's pay-per-click advertising system where sellers can bid on keyword phrases, and the highest bidder gets the best ad spot in the search results. These are the listings that say sponsored next to them. Like you can see here, right at the top of the first page, these are the highest bidders. And in competitive niches, the best keywords can cost as much as $2, $3, $4 or more per click. So for your listing to appear on the first page, you need to match or beat the daily sales velocity of the top sellers. And typically, in competitive niches, these top sellers are moving dozens or even hundreds of units every single day. So the question is, can you afford to pay the $2, $3, or $4 or more per click to match that kind of daily sales velocity in order to get your listing organically ranked on the first page, especially when not every click will turn into a sale? I hope that makes sense. Okay, so set the max review count to 300, and I'll show you the second way to mitigate competition in a minute. The review rating is the feedback score the listing has or how many stars it has. I typically leave this filter alone to start, but this filter can be extremely useful to help you find products that need improvement, meaning people are buying this product despite the fact that it has poor reviews. For example, you can set an upper limit to 3.5 or 4 stars, and then do some further research to determine how you can actually improve the product based on the reviews. And I'll show you how you can do that later on in the video. Now, in the shipping size, I suggest sticking with only standard size products. This keeps your shipping and Amazon fees low. Oversized products can be a logistical nightmare with high storage and shipping and Amazon fees, to the point where it may not even be cost effective to do FBA. And for the same reason, I suggest keeping the weight 2 pounds or less. You can see here on the fulfillment fee schedule, once you get to around 2 pounds or more, the fees really skyrocket. It's $6 and up for large standard, and even more when you get to the oversized packages. For fulfillment, check them all. Now, down here in the exclude title keywords, I use this field to remove common products that keep showing up in the search that I don't want to sell. For example, I don't want to sell clothes and food items, but quite often these products make it through the filters. So as you can see, I have a huge list of keywords here to exclude, like men's, women's, shirt, pants, etc., etc. And if you're doing private label, you're not reselling branded products. So you can exclude brands like Nike, Under Armour, NBA, and so on here in the exclude brands field. And if you want to use my list, I'll post these keywords down in the video description below. Now, one thing I want to point out, leave the number of sellers filter alone. It doesn't matter how many sellers there are. The only sellers that matter are the ones that are on the first page of the search results. A niche can have 1,000 sellers or more. It doesn't matter. Only the top sellers are your direct competitors. 99% of the other sellers aren't selling anything to matter. Okay, now in the sales section here, this is where you can fine tune everything to specific micro niches. The key here is understanding what each one of these filters does so that you can use them effectively and not use the same filter settings that everyone else is using. That way you can find products that other people aren't seeing. In the price filter, this is where you can set the minimum and maximum price of the products to show in the search results. What I suggest is setting a range between $15 and $50. The reason is because anything less than $15, once you subtract your manufacturing costs and the Amazon fees, there won't be any money left for profit. The Amazon fees are going to be at least $6 to $7 or so. So if we use the rule of thirds here, typically 1/3 would go to manufacturing, 1/3 to fees, and the last third is your profit. So at $15, you can expect 1/3 of that will be your profit, which is $5. Anything less than that just wouldn't be worth your time and would be way too risky. Now, for the upper end, I don't suggest anything higher than $50 to start. That's because products beyond that price point, shoppers will typically put more thought and research into it and compare products and prices. So it's no longer an impulse buy. However, with the current e-commerce climate, I suggest actually setting the price range between $30 and $80. This will help you avoid a lot of competition because most beginners or people with smaller budgets are looking in the lower price range. Higher priced products also generally have a much higher profit margin. So if you have more capital, look into the higher price range. Now, parent monthly revenue is how much gross revenue the product is making each month. Revenue is how much total money is made in sales without subtracting the Amazon fees or the manufacturing and shipping costs. And this is where we can also help mitigate and avoid highly competitive niches. What I suggest is setting this range between $6,000 and $18,000. The reason is because, as I mentioned earlier, typically about 1/3 of the revenue is going to be profit. So if a product is generating $6,000 a month in sales, a rough estimate of the monthly profit is going to be around $2,000, a great starting target. You can always adjust this to suit your own needs, but what I don't suggest doing is setting the upper limit to something astronomical in an attempt to find a golden nugget. Products that have huge monthly sales are usually from major brands or top sellers, and too many lazy sellers are looking for these golden nuggets, so they're going to be on everyone's radar, making them way too competitive, so stay away from them. Now, in the parent level sales, start with the minimum of 300 units. This is a good starting point if you're looking for products with a $5 to $10 profit range. If you do the math, 300 monthly sales with a $5 to $10 profit puts you around $1,500 to $3,000 profit per month, which is in line with the realistic $6,000 monthly revenue that we set earlier. Leave the rest of the filters alone. Now, keep in mind that none of these settings are set in stone. You can play around with them to find different product ideas. So don't just copy what I'm showing you here. For example, you can set a maximum review rating to like 3.5 or 4 stars. So you can specifically look for products that are selling well in spite of the fact that they have poor reviews. Or you can combine strategies such as looking for products that have a low BSR, which stands for bestseller rank, meaning they're selling well despite having poor reviews. And a pro tip, I prefer not to use whole numbers in the price and revenue fields. Most people will put $30 or $50 and just go with it, but I like to think outside of the box, and instead I'll use a number like $29.68 or $50.42 or whatever. It doesn't really matter, just so that I can find those outliers that are right on the border of those price points. Sometimes I'll even search right at the breakpoints, since sellers like to set their prices there just to see what I can find. For example, I'll look right at the $20 breakpoint and set the range between $19.52 and $20.13. Again, the decimal doesn't really matter. Just choose something random. And I'll check again at $30 and $40 breakpoints and so on. Thinking outside of the box is what separates the winners from the losers. Again, there's no right or wrong way of doing this first step of product discovery, so play around with the filter settings, learn what they do, and see what you can come up with. Now, another pro tip, you can save these settings so that you can pull it up again in the future, or save several different ones by clicking on Save as Filter Preset here. You can also use Helium 10's preset filters by choosing one of them up here. Once you have the filter set, click Search. Helium 10 will then pull up a list of products in the marketplace that match the filters that you set. So you can see here that Helium 10 pulled up 500 results, and that might seem overwhelming. So you can actually tighten up the search filters to reduce that number in their search results. For example, only look at the products within a smaller price range today, then tomorrow using the same filters, set a different price range, and so on. That way it becomes more manageable for you on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so now in the search results, you can see that Helium 10 has pulled up a ton of products that match the filters that we set, along with data such as the BSR, monthly sales, reviews, total sales, and so on. But we're not going to worry about all of these. The key here during product discovery is instead of having to think of product ideas on your own, we now have a list of products that we can search through to see if any of them look promising to sell. The thing is, just because these individual products matched our search criteria, it doesn't mean that they're good products to sell. That's a very important fact to remember. We need to do further data analysis. Now, a pro tip here, instead of starting on page 1 of the search results, I actually like to work backwards. That's because everyone else is going to start on page 1. Again, thinking outside the box, I want to try to find products that other people aren't seeing. Now, the key to efficient product discovery is to not waste time doing deep analysis on everything that you see here. Browse through these listings and specifically look for products that you don't immediately recognize or appear strange and out of the ordinary. These are the best products to do deeper analysis on. Products that you're familiar with are almost always going to be too competitive, so don't waste your time doing a deep analysis on them. Now, remember when I said earlier that I selected all of the categories? Well, if you take a look here, you can see that Blackbox pulled up 500 results. Well, there's over 12 million products on the Amazon Marketplace, so how can that possibly be a complete list of products that fit the filters that we set? The thing is, depending on which Helium 10 subscription plan you have, there's a hard limit. In this case, a hard limit of 500 results. So there must be a countless number of products that are missing in the search results. So how can we get around that? Well, here's a pro tip. Instead of selecting all of the categories you're interested in at once, search one subcategory at a time. For example, clear out all of the categories and pick something at random. Let's start with sports and outdoors, outdoor recreation, camping and hiking, and tent and shelters, for example. And if we click on search, notice that it didn't hit the hard limit this time. Now I know that I'm looking at all of the products that meet the criteria that I set in the filters and that I'm not missing any products. Can you see how powerful this tactic is? This is a massively powerful hack that beginners don't know about, and so they're missing out on countless product ideas. So now that you know about this trick, it'll take some time, but repeat this one at a time for all of the subcategories. Okay, so if we take a look at the results, look for unique, strange, or out of the ordinary items. Or in my case, these heavy-duty tent stakes, the massively profitable product that I showed you at the beginning of the video. So as you can see, this is the exact strategy that I used to find it. So this is how to do product discovery. Once you've identified some interesting products, the next step is data analysis. So let me show you how to analyze these 10 stakes. Now remember, just because you find an interesting product here, it doesn't mean it's a good product to sell. You need to analyze the entire niche. By analyzing the entire niche, we can determine if there's enough demand, has low competition, and if it meets a number of other factors. So in order to do that, we need to do a search on Amazon for the main keywords for this product. In this case, I think it's obvious that the main keyword is tent stakes. If you're not sure or you want to verify what the keyword is, you can always head over to Amazon, make sure to choose all departments, and do a search for what you think it is, and take a look at the other listing titles to see what the sellers are actually calling it. Now, you can also verify this by browsing through the search results to make sure that the majority of the listings are indeed the same product that you're interested in selling. If you see a ton of unrelated products, then you've probably used the wrong keyword. In this case, these are all the same products, so I'm on the right track. I want to point out that it's extremely important that you choose the correct keyword phrase when you're analyzing niches, because if you use the wrong keyword phrase, you'll end up analyzing the wrong data. In this case, everything looks right, so we're going to start the data analysis by using another tool called X-Ray. X-Ray is a Helium 10 Chrome extension, so make sure you have that installed first. Then click on the Helium 10 icon here and click on X-Ray. Now, as you can see, X-Ray has pulled up all of the details for these top listings in the search results. Isn't that awesome? This is data that you won't be able to get by any other means. Amazon themselves simply doesn't provide this data to the public. We can see each listing's monthly sales, sales history, revenue, how much the fees are, and so on. And while we're here, because of how important it is that you're using the correct keyword phrase, you can verify this by checkmarking a few of the top sellers here. For example, these 3 listings here that have a ton of sales, and click on Run Cerebro. This will open up another powerful tool from Helium 10, and Cerebro will show you all of the keyword phrases that these listings are ranking for. Sort the list by search volume and take a look at the list. We can see that these ones here are not related to the 10 stakes. But if we keep scrolling down, we can see 10 stakes here, and it's the first keyword on this list that's related to the product with the highest search volume. So this is the correct keyword phrase. All these other keywords are a different product. Okay, now back on X-Ray, one super important point I want to mention here: do not sort these listings or rearrange them. I see way too many people doing this. You always want to analyze niches with the listings in their organic order. That's the order as they appear in the search results. This is because these top listings are the listings you'll be competing directly against. You don't want to sort the listings by sales or by revenue or whatever that I see people doing. You also want to ignore all the sponsored listings. These are the listings that have the SP icon next to them. These are listings placed on the page based on Amazon's PPC advertising system. They're not organically ranked here. You can actually hide these listings so they don't show up at all by going to the settings here and checkmark hide sponsored products. Now, by analyzing the data such as the price, sales volume, revenue, and reviews, you can determine if this entire niche meets the criteria that you set in the filters and hit your target profit and sales goals. Now, the first thing that caught my eye is the price point of these products. You can see that the majority of them are way too low. Most are under $10. There's no way I can make any money selling these. So I was about to give up on this product idea, but this listing here caught my eye, and I noticed that these 10 stakes were different. These are screw-in 10 stakes. They're not these smooth shafted ones like in the search results. So I did a search for screw-in 10 stakes instead. And pulling up X-ray again, the price point is much better, close to $30. And the top listings are selling over $20,000 a month. Much better, right? Okay, so now the first thing I like to do is check to see if the niche is too competitive. And we can gauge that by looking at the number of reviews. Scan down the top 15 to 20 listings and see if the majority of the listings have less than 300 or so reviews. That means out of the top listings, you want to see if most of the listings have less than 300 reviews. Actually count them. Never rely on the summary here at the top. Again, too many people rely on this summary. These are averages up here, and averages don't tell you the whole story. For example, if a few listings have a ton of reviews or very few reviews, it'll throw off the entire average. For example, if only one listing was selling $100,000 each month, but all the other listings have barely sold any, then the average revenue of the top 10 sellers would show $10,000 a month, when in reality, only one seller is actually making any decent sales. So only use these averages as a reference. Never base any decisions on it. Now, we can see that most of the listings here have less than 300 reviews, so this niche has pretty low competition, which is great. So let's keep analyzing. Now, if it didn't, and all the listings had way over 300 reviews, I wouldn't waste any more time on this niche. I just forget it and move on to the next product idea. The key during data analysis is to try to disqualify a product as quickly as possible so that you can move on to the next one. That way you can maximize the number of product ideas that you're analyzing and the time that you're spending. So now let's check to see if it meets your sales and profit goals. Do most of the listings have 300 or more sales per month? Again, count them. Don't use the averages at the top. Do most of the listings generate $3,000 per month or more in revenue? In this case, yes. Now, another extremely convenient tool that Helium 10 has is a built-in profit calculator. It's important that you take a look at what the potential profit margin is because the sales and revenue that you see here is just a small picture. For example, you can choose a couple of the top sellers and get a rough estimate of their profits by opening up their listing, then click on the Chrome extension and choose Profitability Calculator. What's great about this tool is that by doing it this way, you can see that it pulls up all of the product details for you as far as the size and weight and other relevant information. It's important that you have actual product details when you're figuring out the profit margin because these factor into the FBA fees. Now, you can see the sale price here. You can adjust it if you want. The estimated manufacturing and shipping costs, the FBA and referral fees, as well as the storage fee. And down here, it shows you what the net profit is. How great is that? Of course, you can adjust all of these parameters. For example, if you head on over to Alibaba and you get a rough estimate of what the costs are, you can adjust the price here and you'll get a pretty good estimate of what your profit will be. Now, if you don't have Helium 10, you can also use the free Amazon FBA calculator. Just do a search on Google for FBA calculator and it'll be the first link, or I'll post a link to it down in the description below. And while we're on the listing page, Helium 10 also has a convenient summary here at the top. For example, you can see the listing quality and how you can possibly improve it, as well as the top keywords this listing is ranking for. And if you scroll down, you can find a historical graph of the price and BSR, which can give you a good idea of how well this product has been performing over time. You can also get an estimate of their inventory levels and other tools here, including the calculator that we just went over. Okay, now moving on with the data analysis, An important metric that sellers don't consider is the listing age. This is how long the listing has been available for sale on Amazon. You want to avoid niches where there's a lot of new listings. This is what I call niche saturation. If you see too many new listings, that means a lot of people have recently discovered this niche and launched their products, and there's probably more to come. This increases the competition and drives up the PPC costs. You also need to keep in mind, with new listings, you can't trust their sales and revenue data. Their sales are most likely generated by doing deep discounts, coupons, promotions, and rebates in order to generate those sales. They're not organic sales. Therefore, out of the top 15 to 20 listings, you want to make sure that you don't see more than 4 to 5 new listings. Make sure most of the listings are more than 3 months old. In this case, we can see that all of them are nearly a year old or more. You also want to make sure that the niche isn't brand dominated, meaning that there isn't any brands that have more than 3 or 4 listings here in the top 15 to 20 positions, and that there isn't any major well-known brands. The reason is because top brands are well established, and they tend to have brand loyal customers that will only buy from them, so shoppers are less likely to consider buying from third-party sellers. Big brand names may also be generating sales from direct traffic outside of Amazon, where they're sending traffic directly to their product listings. So you won't be able to compete with them since you're relying on PPC sales and searches on Amazon. And not to mention, major brands generally have unlimited advertising budgets, so it'll be difficult to outcompete them. In this case, we can see that there's no major brands and no single brand has multiple listings here at the top positions. Another factor you need to consider is seasonality, meaning products that only sell well during a short period of time of the year, like Christmas decorations or Halloween costumes. You want to sell products that sell well all year round. An easy way to check is to click on the sales graph on one of the top sellers that's been selling for more than a year. Select all time and make sure the sales is pretty consistent throughout the year. It'll be pretty obvious if the product is seasonal. For example, if we look at pool noodles, you can see that they only sell well during the summer months. For these tent stakes, you can see it's fairly consistent throughout the year, but as expected, they would sell more during the summer months. You can also click on the search volume up here and do the same thing. Now, if you don't have Helium 10, you can check for seasonality by doing a search on Google Trends. Do a search for the main keyword and change the period to 5 years. And again, you can see the trend. And in this case, tent stakes does seem to have a lull between November and March. Now keep in mind though, some niches may have spikes during Christmas if they're giftable products, and that's okay. I just don't recommend selling seasonal products until you have more experience because inventory management is extremely important in order to be profitable. Now, I'm just scratching the surface here when it comes to product analysis. There's much more factors that you need to consider, such as patents and trademarks, restricted and prohibited products, gated products, and product compliance. You can't just sell whatever you want on Amazon, but that's beyond the scope of this video. So if you want to learn more about that, I'll post a link to a detailed video down in the description below. All right, now, if you find a viable product that meets all of these analysis criteria, or at least comes close, you can move on to step 3 of product research, and that's making sure your product has some sort of competitive advantage. This is a crucial step that so many new sellers don't consider. Once you've identified a good product idea, one that passes all the criteria, you can't just sell the same thing as everyone else. Otherwise, you can only compete on price, and you never want to compete on price. Otherwise, everyone selling the same thing will end up in a price war where everyone just keeps lowering the price in order to capture sales, that the price gets driven so low that there's no money left for profit. Now, there's tons of different ways you can differentiate your product, such as improving the product, fixing a problem, adding a feature, or bundling it with a bonus item. For example, if you click on some of the top sellers, you can see what shoppers have frequently bought together here. You can use these ideas to create a bundle and add value to your product idea. Or you can do some research and see what other items people use or need when they're using the product. Now, one of my favorite ways to come up with ideas is to analyze the reviews. It's the best way to get real-world feedback from actual shoppers and find excellent ideas to improve the product. What you can do is take a look at some of the top sellers' listings and use another tool from Helium 10 called Review Insights. Then click on the keywords option here This is going to show you all the top keyword phrases in the reviews. You can scan down this list to identify any problems or suggestions left by actual shoppers. For example, look at the low ratings here. You can see what shoppers are complaining about. These are things that you can fix, and you can actually use the rating filter here to only look at the poor reviews. For example, I can see that a common issue is that these are pulling out of the ground. So you can improve the product by fixing this issue. And similarly, look at the top ratings. Identify features that shoppers are raving about and make sure your product includes these features. You can see here that shoppers are saying that it works well, they're easy to install, and so on. Remember, people tend to complain about the same thing or rave about the same thing, so do your research to identify what these key features are. And a pro tip, if you click on the variations option here, you can see the reviews grouped by variation. This is a great strategy to help you determine which variation sells the best. For example, we can see that this 20 count in white is easily outselling all of the other options here. 44% of the sales is from this one variation. So, judging by this metric alone, if I was to launch this product idea, I would highly lean towards white and in a 20 pack. But again, you want to do this for several of the top sellers and put together a complete and thorough list of ideas and not just focus on one single listing. That way you can use this feedback to develop a much better product than all of your competitors. Okay, so now that we've covered that, let's rewind a bit. Using the product database isn't the only way to do product discovery. In fact, there's no right or wrong way to do product discovery. Sometimes I'll even find interesting product ideas from just doing my day-to-day activities. I've actually made videos about products that I found while running errands. Remember, you always want to be thinking outside of the box. So I'll show you a couple of other ways that you can use Helium 10 for product discovery. If we head on over to the keywords option in black box here, we'll find a different set of filters that we can use to pull up a list of product ideas that match these criteria, just like we did in the product database. So how this works is, unlike the products option, instead of pulling up product ideas, it's going to pull up keyword phrases based on the search volume and any other metrics that we set here. This way you can find different opportunities based on what people are actually searching for. So to start, choose the marketplace that you want to look in. Then in the search volume filter, I suggest setting a minimum search volume of around 300 to 3,000. That's 10 to 1,000 searches per day. Anything less than that just wouldn't have enough demand. You can start with no max search volume, but I suggest setting this upper limit to around 30,000 to 50,000 range. You want to stay away from extremely high volume keywords because they tend to be way too competitive, but you can always play around with these and see what kind of results you get. In the monthly revenue, price range, and review count, set them using the same strategy that we did for the product database. So set the price range between $15 to $50, the revenue between $4,000 and $16,000, and the review count, a max of 300. And again, like we did in the product database, you can set a maximum review rating if you want to specifically look for opportunities where there's room to improve the product. Now, a pro tip here is I suggest setting the word count to a minimum of 3 words. This is because the shorter keyword phrases, generally speaking, have much more competition. But not only that, the shorter the keyword phrase, the broader the product selection is. You want to find product opportunities that are more specific. For example, if someone was looking for a knife set, that keyword phrase might be too broad and it'll include hunting knives, woodworking knives, and kitchen knives. So a better keyword phrase would be more specific to what a shopper is looking to buy, like kitchen knife set. So because of that, start with a minimum word count of 3, but you can always play around with this and see what you come up with. In the advanced filter section, select the categories like we did in the product database. Fulfillment, excluded keywords, monthly sales, and shipping tier size. Also set these filters like we did before in the product database. Again, you can play around with all of these other filters too, but these settings here are a great starting point. I don't really use any of these other filters here, but as I said before, there's no right or wrong way, so play around with them to see what kind of results you get. Then hit search. Now, notice that in the results, you're not getting a list of product ideas. Instead, this is a list of keyword phrases that match the filters that we set. Now, like we did in the product database, I ignore all of the data that you see here on the right. What I suggest doing is look through these keyword phrases and see if there's anything strange and unique. Again, stay away from things that you immediately recognize. It's probably going to be too competitive. And stay away from simple, uninspiring products. What I mean is like these carriage bolts. At the end of the day, it's just a bolt. Or these crazy straws. There's nothing you can do to make them unique or improve the product and add any real value. At the end of the day, shoppers are just gonna look for the option that has the most quantity at the lowest price. And I don't wanna sell products like that. There's simply no money to be made there when it just ends up being a price war. So let me show you what you can do when you do find an interesting idea. For example, this griddle caddy for Blackstone caught my eye. I have no idea what this thing is, so let's do a search on Amazon. Again, make sure you choose all departments, and let's take a look and see what this thing is. Now, it looks to me like it's an attachment for a barbecue for you to store barbecue tools and accessories. That's pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure people that love to barbecue would love to have something like this. So let's pull up X-Ray and let's take a look at the numbers. So the first place that I like to look is at the competition. And remember, I want to see most of the top 15 to 20 listings have less than 300 reviews. And this niche looks like it's right at the borderline of meeting that criteria. That's pretty interesting. Now, if we take a look at the price point, these are selling around $30 to $40, and that's also really good. And these top sellers are actually making over $20,000 to $30,000 a month. Wow. In fact, there's only 3 listings here that are under $4,000. And you know what? I may have accidentally stumbled across another winning product while making this video. And so a quick glance over here, it's not brand dominated either. And all of the listings here are at least a year old, so it's definitely not saturated. So this is amazing. I mean, there you go. I hope you can see how easy it can be to find a winning product idea if you have a strategy and a plan in place. Again, I would do a bit more research into this product, but so far it passes all of the data analysis criteria that I went over earlier. Although I do have a feeling that this might be a seasonal product. So if we take a look at one of the top sellers here, and look at their historical data. Yep, just like I thought, it does sell amazingly well during the summer. And of course, people like to give products like this away for Christmas, so there is a spike here. So thinking about this, I personally wouldn't pursue this product because it is seasonal. But for those of you that are less risk adverse, there you go. I did most of the hard work for you. Just do a bit more research before diving in. Now, back on Blackbox, there's another option here, the niche option, which is another excellent way to do product discovery. This option is a little different than the other two. Instead of the typical filters, you want to enter a keyword phrase that describes a niche that you're interested in. For example, you can put gardening, fitness, home organization, or you can be more specific, like golfing or gifts for mom, or you can even try niches that you're familiar with, such as your own personal interests or hobbies. That way you can actually have knowledge about the products, which can give you a huge advantage on what to look for and how to improve the product. Now again, having the right tools at your disposal and knowing how to properly use them is what separates the winners from the losers. If you want to try out Helium 10, remember I do have a link down in the description below for a trial if you want to test it out, as well as a coupon for you to get a huge discount if you do decide to upgrade. Now, once you've selected a product idea, you need to make sure that you're allowed to sell it on Amazon. Most beginners don't know this, but you can't just sell whatever you want on Amazon. Just because you see other people selling it doesn't mean Amazon will allow you to. So never buy any inventory before you do your due diligence. Otherwise, you might get stuck with hundreds or thousands of dollars of products that you can't sell. The best way to check is by creating a test product listing and verifying that there isn't any product restrictions or compliance requirements. And this video right over here will show you exactly how to do that.